Welcome to Kangaroo Ground Presbyterian Church's weekly online sermon for Sunday, December 20, 2020. As regular in-person church services have resumed, for now our online service is in audio format only. This is the third and final part of the series, the Prologue of John's Gospel. The reading for this series is from the book of John, chapter 1, verses 1 to 18. Here is the Bible reading for this week.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, but the darkness has not understood it. There came a man who was sent from God. His name was John. He came as a witness to testify concerning that light, so that through him all men might believe. He himself was not the light. He came only as a witness to the light. The true light that gives light to every man was coming into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. Yet to all who received him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God, children born not of natural descent, nor of human decision or a husband's will, but born of God. The Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only, who came from the Father, full of grace and truth. John testifies concerning him. He cries out, saying, "This was he of whom I said, He who comes after me has surpassed me, because he was before me." From the fullness of his grace we have all received one blessing after another. For the law was given through Moses. Grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God, but God, the one and only, who is at the Father's side, has made him known.
We're continuing our series on the Word that has become flesh. And today we're going to look at what the ultimate purpose of it all is. We know, of course, the Word became flesh to die for our sin. We know, of course, the Word became flesh so Christ can understand what it's like to be in a human body. And that's a really great theological truth in itself. We know the Word became flesh to set an example for us. We can look at the life of Christ and know how to live. In a way, the Word that's become flesh has sanctified human life in a unique way. But there's even a grander reason why the Word has become flesh. And that is, it says in John 1:12, "As many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God." And that's what we're going to look at today. This is what it's all about. This is the climax of all theology. It's the fact that Christ wants to enter into a relationship with us. We are now the sons of God. It doesn't get any better than that. Let me illustrate with this truth. Once upon a time, there was a very rich king who lived in a palace, but was very lonely. And one day, as he was on his horse, he was trotting by a village, and he saw a very attractive young lady. He sort of caught this rich king's eye. So every time he would travel on his horse, he would always try and get a glimpse of this very attractive lady. But he had a problem. How was he going to win her love? Now, he could issue a royal sort of a decree, but of course that wouldn't really win her love, would it? He's sort of forcing her hand. How would he know that she loved him? Now, he could try to woo her love, but how would he know that she wasn't with him for his prestige and for his position? And this young lady, by the way, was a peasant. So this rich king decided to become a peasant. And he lived among the peasants, he suffered with them, he worked with them. And in that context, he finally wooed the love of his life. Now the illustration breaks down in the sense that God is self-sufficient. God doesn't need us. But it does illustrate the fact that God, the Word who became flesh, did that to enter into a relationship with us. Verse 12 is what we're going to look at today. And it says, "Yet to all who received him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become the children of God." Notice that it says, "To all those that received him." We see here the free will in the salvation process. For those that received him, to those that trusted in Jesus Christ, the Messiah, the Son of God. The ones that have done that, the ones that continually trust in Jesus Christ, the Son of God, the Messiah, the ones that do that, to them gave him power. That word power means the privilege, right, the authority to become the sons of God. What a phenomenal and staggering thought that we who sit in these pews this morning, we have received Christ. We have been given divine status of sonship. We're not just subjects of the King, we're not just servants to a master, we stand related to the King of Kings as his son. Now it's one thing a child of a human being is a great privilege. A child of a king is a greater privilege, but to be children of the King of Kings. What a breathtaking thought. We're going to unpack that a little bit this morning. But we who were dead in sin, God, in his infinite wisdom, devised a plan where we can be his sons, the sons of God. You may say, well, how do I achieve such a high status? Notice in verse 13 it says, not born but natural descent. So we're not sons of God by being born that way. You may think that's ridiculous, thinking that you're going to be born a Christian, but when I did my placement in Skipton about 5 years ago, I went down to member roll and I visited everyone. And I'd always ask them, how did you become a Christian? And there was about 2 people in the visit that said, well, I was just born that way. People still think that. The only person that's born a Christian is my son. His name is Christian. Thankfully, he's a Christian as well. But we're not born a Christian. We're not born by blood. Nor are we born by the will of flesh. We can't will our way into the kingdom. We're not saved by works. It says Ephesians 2:8 and 9. I've never forgotten that. It's one of my little memory verses that I memorised as a boy. But it says, for by grace are you saved through faith, not of yourselves. It is a gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast. So we're not saved by our good works. And that hymn writer says as well in that timeless passage, he says, nor the labour of my hands can fulfil the Lord's demands. Could my zeal no respite know, could my tears forever flow? All for sin could not atone, thou must save, and thou alone. So we're not sons of God being born that way, we're not sons of God by our works, and neither are we sons of God by the will of man. We can't persuade people to become the sons of God. It is only of God. Verse 13 says. So you may say, well, okay, I have received Christ. I'm receiving Christ as the Son of God and as the Messiah, but I don't feel like the Son of God. Just because you don't feel like something doesn't negate the reality of the truth. Now, I turned 40 last week. I don't feel 40. In fact, I was saying to someone yesterday actually that I feel probably fitter now that I'm 40 than what I was when I was 30. I'll put a bit more emphasis on exercise and diet. So I don't actually feel 40 at all, to be quite honest. But it doesn't negate the fact that I'm 40. And just because you don't feel like a son of God doesn't mean necessarily that you're not one. Another point I want to make is this, that how you feel about a theological truth correlates with the level of faith that you have in that truth. And it stands for, that holds up for anything in life. If I was to say to you right now that I've just written out a cheque for $100,000 for you, to the extent of how much you believe that to be true, is the extent to how much that will affect how Now, you probably wouldn't feel much now because you think, well, he's just making that up. But if I was actually to say, check your phone right now, and I went through, that will certainly affect how you feel, because it's a reality, it's true. So I want to encourage you with this truth. How we get it from here to here is we think about it, we meditate upon it. So I want to encourage you this Christmas time to meditate upon this profound truth that you are the sons of God. Think of it like this. Think of it if you have a tightrope and you have three people on the tightrope. The person at the front is called fact, the person behind that is called faith, and the person behind that is called feeling. Now, as long as the person in the middle keeps his eye on the fact, then the feelings will eventually follow. That's what it means to live by faith. Keep our eyes continually on the fact that we are the sons of God. Meditate upon it. It will become real. Well, you might say, well, this sounds too good to be true. Being the sons of God, that's just phenomenal. I mean, that's just too good to be true. I want you to read John 1:16 with me. It says, from the fullness of his grace, we have all received one blessing after another. It's too good to be true if we have a deficient view of God's grace. God's grace is not only to the undeserving, which is what most theologians focus on, but it's also the ill-deserving. Someone knocks on your door and says, someone off the street says, I want to have dinner with you, and you let them in for dinner. That's you're showing favour to the undeserving. They don't deserve necessarily to have dinner with you. But if they're stolen from your home and knock on your door, I want to have dinner with you. Well, that's you're showing favour not only to the undeserving, but the ill-deserving. You should be ringing the police. Grace, God's grace, is not only to the undeserving, but the ill-deserving. And even though we are undeserving and ill-deserving, as many as receive him, to them they have the power to become the sons of God. You may also object, well, how can I rely on this to be true? What if God changes his mind at the end? Notice with me in verse 17. It says, the law was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. The Word who became flesh is not only full of grace, but he's full of truth. In other words, he's reliable. We can depend upon him to honour his word. Now come with me to Prologue chapter 1, verse 2. One of the most profoundest verses in the Bible. It says, a faith and knowledge resting on the hope of eternal life, which God, who does not lie, promised before the beginning of time. God has promised us that as many as received him, to them gave him power to become the sons of God. God doesn't lie. The wonderful truth. You may say, what does this mean to me in my life right now? How is this going to affect my life? The fact that I am a son of God. Well, I want to draw out very briefly just three simple applications. And the first one is that it drives out fear. It drives out fear. Please read this off the page. It's one of the most beautiful verses in the entire Bible. It's actually probably one of my favourite verses. Romans 8:15. I think as Christians, if we get our heads around a bit more of this truth, perhaps we might be able to sleep a bit more at night. It says, for you did not receive the spirit that makes you a slave again to fear, but you received the spirit of sonship. By him we cry, Abba, Father. Abba is Aramaic for daddy. Think about the relationship you had with your dad. That is, if you had a good one. How you felt towards your dad. That's or how a son should feel towards his dad. That's the relationship that we now have as sons of God. Therefore, we don't obey to gain acceptance, we obey from acceptance. Ephesians 1:6 says we are already accepted in the beloved. The whole dynamic of our lives now is not rules, it's relationship. Let me illustrate. When I met Jodie about 15, 16 years ago, her dad had a whole lot of rules. He said, you're going to give Jodie a side hug while we're dating. He said, you have to be home by this time. And you have to spend this amount of time with the family. And he said, if you don't, then you're not going to have Jodie. So our relationship for a couple of years was very rules orientated. Because the reality is, if I didn't toe the line, then Jodie was gone. Now, thankfully, Jodie's sitting in the front pew, so you can tell that I did toe the line for the most part. But when I got married to Jodie, we were entered into a covenant relationship. Jodie's dad was out the picture. But I then did the right thing with Jodie, with the security and the stability of a marriage relationship. And that's the key point with sonship, is that we don't obey with this dreaded, God having a dreaded stick ready to whip us if we don't do the right thing, or to sever us if we do the wrong thing, that we obey in a sonship relationship. We obey in the security of a covenant relationship that you have with God. The second application I want to make is a simple one, and that is in Romans 5:1. It talks about the fact that we have peace. Not only does this idea of sonship drive out of fear, but the second point riding up that is that we can have peace with God. Therefore, being justified by faith, we have peace with God. That word peace in the Greek means irene, and it means absence of hostile intent. I know you've heard this illustration before, but can you imagine if you had two sort of brothers growing up who never had an argument, ever? They were both perfect. Imagine if Jesus had a brother who was also divine, how that would play out as they grew up. That is the relationship that we have with God. There's no more hostility. God doesn't have any hostile intents towards us. We have peace. This is not a peace from well-being. It's not a peace in our inner feelings necessarily or primarily. It's not a peace from favourable circumstances. It's a deep-seated peace in our hearts that God has forgiven us our sins, that we have been imputed the righteousness of Christ, but also we are sons of God. And the final point, which I think is the logical one, is you're the Son of God. You've entered into this new relationship as the Son of God. Pray more. Just like in life, when you enter into a new relationship with someone, your friend and your spouse, when you start to have children, you get to know who your children are, you want to get to know them. You want to talk to them. Pray more to God. There'd be probably no greater resolution going into 2021 than that. Commit yourself to pray more to your Father as a son to a father. Remember, we belong to the King. We are the sons of God. His blood now runs in our veins. Don't forget that at this Christmas time. Don't forget the ultimate purpose of it all. The grand plan, the turning parts, the end goal of it all, the climax of it all is that we are in part now, but we will be fully the sons of God and daughters. Good point. Thanks for being politically correct. Romans 8:15, I'll close. It says, therefore God has not given us the spirit of bondage again to fear. God has given us the spirit of adoption whereby we cry, Abba, Father. That is the glorious truth. Don't forget that in all that you're doing in the next week or so. Don't forget that glorious truth. Let us close in prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord God, and become the sons of God. We thank you, Lord, that even though the time gone by we were clothed in rags, we were dead in trespasses and sins, that you have made a way in eternity past, you have devised a plan of salvation, whereby we don't just have forgiveness of sins, we're not just imputed with the perfect righteousness of Christ, but we have the status of divine sonship. We belong to the King, we are sons of his love. So we praise you, Lord God, for this breathtaking, staggering thought, that we are not servants to you, you're not our master, we are not your servants, but we are your sons and we stand related to you as your very own child. Help us, Lord, in all the hustle and bustle, the noise and the lights, and all the festivity at this time, help us not to forget that was the end goal of it all. It's really, in many ways, the climax of all theology. And so may we be mindful of the fact that we are accepted in the beloved, as we are the sons of God. So Lord, help us to meditate upon this truth, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen.